Hi there, and welcome to Let Food Be My Medicine with Eat, Nourish, Flourish and me, Kerry Davis-Munro. I'm going to give you a little bit of a whirlwind tour because we could actually spend the whole session just looking at one aspect of what I'm going to talk about, but hopefully you can take away a few nuggets of information that may well help you, but may well also start you on a journey to discover a little bit more and read a little bit more. And I will at the end give you three recommendations for some favourite books of mine which really took me on the journey when I began. A little bit about me. I've just stepped back from a multi-award winning food business which I started over 6 years ago in London. The products were very, very healthy superfood filled chocolate truffles, and we now sell those internationally and around the UK. Prior to that, I was running food workshops for people who wanted to learn how to eat very quickly and healthily from fresh each night, and I have run workshops locally, but that also led me to work with Ocado and populate their website when they were looking to generate a number of recipes when they were first starting and setting up a section for particularly healthful recipes, and they took 30 of mine when they were doing that. I have qualifications in PE, I've been a PE teacher, I have a qualification from the Institute of Nutrition, and I'm also CIPD qualified, so I've worked with businesses as well to look at improving the lifestyle of employees and looking at how presenteeism at work and lack of health at work can affect obviously the bottom line. So I have over 17 years of working within the wellness industry, and within that as a PE teacher, a fitness instructor, food innovation consultant, and latterly as a food consultant one-to-one with individuals. I have 3 children, and everything I do permeates my lifestyle and the way that I treat them. So I do cook from fresh every night. I definitely use food as my medicine for those. My eldest son suffers from epilepsy, so very recently he was supposed to change medications, which would have been extremely disruptive for him, and would have had a massive impact upon his schooling. He feels very tired when he takes medications. Most of the anti-epileptic drugs are have a draining effect on the body, and he's tired most of the time. So instead of that, I decided I was going to up his essential fats. So he's actually on essential fats 4 times a day now in a very high dosage, and his episodes came down, and I haven't as yet had to change his medications, which has been a big win. So my approach is always to look at alternatives and to look at doing things naturally if possible before taking medications. Not that I believe there isn't a place and absolutely a rightful place for allopathic medicine, but there is certainly room for complementary healthcare, and certainly food can be our medicine on a number of occasions. So my background was I used to play very, very high level sport, and I played it continuously for a number of years at school, to a point where I became quite ill and I had glandular fever, which translated into later life as chronic fatigue, which I was managing quite carefully, but still doing all of the physical activity. I didn't take a break, I didn't give my body a break, which was the wrong thing to do. And I actually had a hair analysis, which was quite insightful, in fact revelationary. So I was having pain in my joints, my digestion was sluggish, to say the least. I had ovarian cysts and had 2 operations for ovarian cysts, and in general was exhausted all the time while still trying to exercise, thinking that was doing me good. So I had a hair analysis, and basically it came back and outlined every condition that I was and symptom that I was feeling, and said that if I continued in this way that I would be very ill in later life and could possibly lead to Alzheimer's. That was a big wake-up call for me. I did everything from throw out my pots and pans, which were non-stick, and replace them all with stainless steel, to change my lifestyle in an absolute blink of an eye. So because food was my highlight of the day, I decided that it was certainly not about denial, and I couldn't maintain a healthier lifestyle and a change in my diet if my food wasn't as delicious as it was nutritious. So that's when I took my course from the Institute of Nutrition. I read voraciously around the subject, started experimenting with different foods, cutting different foods out, cutting out dairy, cutting out wheat, which naturally our body doesn't digest very easily. Some of us can tolerate it, most of us can't. and really transformed the way that I was living. But instead of, as I say, that being a negative thing and meal times being a bit of a denial, it was the opposite. I loved playing around with different foods and ensuring that every mouthful that I took was doing me some good. And the whole mindset around that changed. So I thought it would be interesting, before we start fully, to look at some of the ailments associated with age. So what are we talking about here? So firstly, we're talking about Alzheimer's, and that's a big one in the news at the moment. And many of us have been unhappy enough or unlucky enough to have relatives or friends who've been dealing with this pretty awful condition. 1 in 9 people will suffer from Alzheimer's. Then heart disease, 37% of men and 26% of women will suffer from heart disease. Arthritis, it's the #1 condition that the over 65s will suffer from. Then we have all of the digestive issues such as Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, etc. Diabetes is one in the news all the time that we're hearing, along with obesity and monitoring our sugar intake. Depression is obviously a big one in old age. People are far lonelier, people can't access the same lifestyle that they were doing when they're younger, and depression and mental illness is very big in old age. Then falling. You'll often hear that older people are going to fall and they don't recover the same way. A fall can be absolutely debilitating, and it can often be the downward slope to other sorts of illnesses as well. Oral health, funnily enough. There's a funky little fact that people who floss and look after their teeth by flossing twice a day tend to live longer. And I think that's quite insightful. I'm not quite sure if it's because using or having very good oral health does affect the body so much. We do know that oil pulling that you can do with putting a little bit of coconut oil in your mouth, maybe with some turmeric, is not only cleaning for our teeth, but it also has a cleaning effect for the whole body, where it pulls out the toxins for us. So oral health is very, very important. Cancer, we know, and hormonal changes, which can be just as debilitating as other illnesses. Hormonal changes can absolutely floor us. And I will say that there are 1 or 2 foods that can actually target every single one of those conditions. One would target all of those, and that would be an avocado, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So in short, we're looking to protect our cardiovascular system, our brains, our digestive system with all of those degenerative issues that we talked about in the previous slide, our bones, our muscles, connective tissues, and even our joints. When I say even our joints, most importantly our joints. And finally, our thoughts, because our thoughts influence the key activity of the brain. So if we are thinking negative thoughts, then this will absolutely be translated into what we are feeling physically. So keeping our minds positive, keeping our minds healthy, keeping them nourished, keeping them watered will have a direct effect on what is happening to us physically in the body. So what's the ideal then? The ideal is that we're looking for longevity, but we're also looking for a quality of life. One without the other is not intelligent aging, and that's what we're all here for, to intelligently age, make sure that age is just a number, but our quality of life is extremely important. My philosophy for all of my businesses and in everything in life is that there is a triangle, and at the peak of the triangle, and most important, the cornerstone is our nutrition, so what we eat. That is then backed up by our exercise and our physical activity, and the last point of the triangle is our mind management and our adequate rest. One without the other will not get you total holistic health. The food and the nutrition, as I said, I firmly believe is the cornerstone. It's the most important, but optimum health and well-being comes from all 3 combined together. So holistic health, what is total health and well-being? When the intimate relationship between mind and body is disrupted, aging and entropy accelerate. So as I was saying in the previous slide, we have to have a unison between what we're doing and feeling in our mind and the positivity in our mind and what we're translating into the physical. The body's natural state is to want to be well. It's what we put into our body, it's the stress that we put onto our body, it's the chemicals we put on and into our body that take away full holistic health and well-being. It disrupts that balance, it makes us ill, and it gives us dis-ease. And there's a lovely quote from Deepak Chopra, which I heard a couple of weeks ago. It was streaming through Spotify when I was listening to something else. It just, one of those freaky moments. And the gist of that quote was that our bodies are the manifestation for the garden of the seeds we plant in our minds. So I think that's very powerfully, that gives us a powerful visualization. Everything that we have in our mind is then filtered through our bodies, and our bodies are the manifestation. So we must be mindful of that. So when we talk about optimum health and peak performance, we bring to mind top athletes and people who are absolutely in peak performance and performing at the top of their game. So we have people like Federer, we have obviously Djokovic. Interesting at the moment that Federer is making a comeback, and we've often talked about him. One of my yoga gurus will often say, have you noticed how when he performs and throughout his life he federizes everything, which means he internalizes it. So we often do the plank, or we'll do an exercise which obviously is quite painful, and the aim is not to show this on the face, not to show the emotion, and to just internalize everything. And I think it's very interesting that at Federer's age he is making such a big comeback this year, when so many of his rivals have also had surgery, and have also been dealing with lots of the issues that he has. Obviously he's got very young children, life must be quite stressful for him, but he manages this so well in his mind, and I think that's quite an interesting point. So why do we get ill as we get older? Well, obviously our bodies are aging, and there are degenerative issues, but we are simply a product of, I believe, years of neglect. I have worked and talked to so many people, particularly in corporates, who believe that they are invincible in their 20s and 30s, and they will go out and live and work quite hard, believing that they are invincible and disease and illness is not going to happen to them. And obviously within your 20s and 30s you do feel quite well, you're physically fit, you can probably get to the gym at the end of the day, push a few weights and push yourself physically, and then play quite hard as well. But I believe that we don't often notice what we are doing wrong or the effects of some of those things until it is too late. While we are young, we can power through things, and we don't know how bad the effects are going to be of that until we get a little bit older and there is a build-up of issues. So exercise, the first point of that triangle, which I'm not here to talk about tonight, but obviously exercise is extremely beneficial to us as we're aging, not only for our cardiovascular system, but also to maintain healthy joints, healthy connective tissues, and also to increase the pulse rate and for our skin. And this is an age-old analogy, but one that I think sums up everything that I'm saying quite well. And a question that I would always say, when you look at a supercar like this, what makes this car perform? Is it the engine? Is it the bodywork? It's one thing. It's the fuel that you're going to put in it. Put the wrong fuel in that car and the car is absolutely nothing. The engine cannot function. So exactly the same with us. And I know you'll have heard that analogy before, but it is so true. You are absolutely what you eat. What you put in your body, what you let past your mouth and you let past your teeth. It's down to you, and you are a product of what you let past your teeth. At a very basic level, therefore, our food is just fuel. But there is good fuel and there is bad fuel. There are positive, nutrient-dense calories and there are completely empty calories which are doing you no good and will contribute to dis-ease. So you become a product of what you put in your mouth, what you eat, and also, most importantly, what your body is able to absorb, what your system is able to take into it. And what I mean by that is there is absolutely no point eating fantastic food, cooking from fresh, ensuring all your fresh fruit and vegetables are going in and you're getting your nutrients if your system isn't functioning well enough to be able to digest that. And if we don't have that, and if we're not putting the right fuel in, then obviously we have breakdown. That's when we become ill. So it's a balance versus dis-ease. Everything is about a balance. Our diet, nutrition and lifestyle is balanced against poor diet, stress